Hello, my name's Laufie, and I typically cover Lost Ark and Blue Protocol content as of late. However, I recently found out about a sequel to a very old MMORPG from 2005 called Perfect World. The sequel itself is called Perfect New World, but it's not a port of the mobile game Perfect World 2. This is a brand new, standalone, real MMORPG for PC. In this video, I cover everything we currently know about the game from all of the official sources I could possibly find, a little tidbits that I noticed in some of the trailers that weren't directly mentioned by the devs but are still there, and a little bit of speculation at the end pertaining to what we might get in the future. The video is split into 7 sections: general overview, classes and races, customization, content, world, pure speculation, and possible issues. In pure speculation, I preview some of the possible classes and races that may come to the game in the future, and a little bit of trivia with info bits I know about the original game. I did a lot of research among a very limited amount of information from official sources that we have available to us right now, with the objective of allowing you to skip that process and just condensing all of the information for a concise delivery just for you. I encourage you to utilize the chapters in this video because there is a lot of information to cover, or you can just sit back and listen to me talk your ear off. Let's get into it. Number 1. General overview. Perfect New World is a brand new action combat MMORPG developed and published by Iron Core Game Studio. Not much is known about this studio, and Perfect New World looks to be their first game title. This game was announced back in 2021 when things went pretty silent, until very recently when the developers announced a closed beta test which will be happening on May 4th, 2023. This test will last 5 days, and you can currently sign up for it through a questionnaire linked in the description. Applications for the test will close at midnight EDT on April 23rd, so if you want to try your luck, go sign up now. Just don't close the video. The developers commented that a heavy focus of this closed beta is ensuring stability, playability, and user experience. In their own words, they aim to understand the needs and expectations of players, as well as solve problems based on player feedback. The closed beta will be through Steam, and Western players are welcome to apply, as the game will be available both in English and simplified Chinese for the duration of the test. Unfortunately for all of my creator friends, this closed beta test is under NDA, so any streaming or screen recording is strictly prohibited for the duration of the test. The actual launch of the game is planned for 2023. Number 2. Classes and races. The combat is described as action combat. However, upon closer inspection of the trailer, I noticed a dot that persists on the enemy, leading me to assume that the combat is non-target but not true action either, employing a soft lock mechanic much like Blade & Soul and Revelation Online. The combat also heavily features aerial combos and mid-air combat. Although not previewed in the trailer, the game designer mentions that Perfect New World will feature extensive skill trees that will alter the effects of existing skills, which sounds like a pretty fun system. Now on to the bad news. From the title of this section, you've probably realized that classes and races are intertwined in the game, and unfortunately it looks like they may be, just as they were in the original game. The reason for this assumption is the fact that the class is heavily intertwined with the lore and identity of the race that represents it, as you will notice when we look at the classes more closely in a second. Furthermore, classes also seem to be gender-locked. This assumption is based on the fact that they were gender-locked in the original Perfect World, but also the fact that the game designer consistently uses gendered pronouns to refer to the classes themselves. Both race locks and gender locks are a speculation, but as you've seen, a lot of things point to them being a reality, especially considering the fact that the classes available in the closed beta are only previewed in that race and gender combo, with no gender selection button seen anywhere in the customization screen. Now, onto the classes themselves. The beta will feature 3 playable classes, with a plan to add more at a later time. The Berserker is a heavy hitter class playable by the Mythic race. They are a beastly race that was present in the original game, described to embody freedom, peace, and connection with nature. Although the men of the Mythic race look very animalistic, I would like to point out that in the OG game, the female counterparts of this race were basically fox girls. So that's probably what we will get in this version too. Berserker wields a greatsword that can be transformed into an axe, quote, depending on user's control. It's not entirely clear how this swapping is achieved, but in the trailer I didn't notice any free stance swapping, so I assume the so-called stances are tied to specific skills. At a certain point in the Berserker preview, we can see him straight up punch an enemy with his bare fists. Later on, we can see a very powerful and visually impressive attack, as well as him activating a sort of beast mode that changes his overall appearance and gives him claws that he uses to maul his enemy. Again, no information on how this is achieved. If I had to guess, probably a long cooldown ratio. or something that's tied to gauge generation. Either way, this is the #1 reason why my assumption that classes are race-locked is basically solidified in stone. The Galeblade is a mobile, fast-paced class playable by the Elven race, the embodiment of beauty, grace, and purity. Staying true to the lore of the original game, the elves in Perfect New World have wings, but in this game they transform into Galeblade's dual swords when she enters combat. Pretty damn unique if you ask me. From the trailer, the Galeblade seems to be a heavily aerial combat-oriented class, with an overloaded arsenal of crowd control. Lastly, the Mystic Sword is a melee to mid-range class playable by the human race, said to embody morality, honor, and imagination. Similarly to Berserker, the Mystic Sword swaps between a claymore and a glaive. And just like the Berserker, he's also shown punching an enemy with his fists, albeit at a much faster rate. Perhaps this means that every class has a level of hand combat, but I'm curious to see what that would mean for ranged classes, which, as you may have noticed, are not present in the beta. At a later point in the trailer, we see the Mystic Sword employ some kind of and if you pay attention, you will notice that one sword disappears every time he uses a skill. This leads me to assume that these swords enhance your normal skills, possibly tied to gauge generation as well. Number 3. Customization. In terms of character creation, Perfect New World seems to employ a pretty average amount of customization expected of an Eastern MMORPG, like hairstyles, makeup, body and face tattoos, skin, lip and eye color, and so on. There is no body customization preview in the trailer, but looking at this icon on the left of a character doing a flexing pose, as well as this tab up here titled Shaping, I am speculating that we will be able to adjust the muscle definition of our characters at the least, but probably not much else. The hair seems to employ a gradient system, despite there only being a handful of hairstyles. Since the developers used an elven model for customization preview, we can actually see a unique feature where the wings on her head are part of her character and not just a cosmetic or part of the hairstyle. We didn't get to see in-depth face customization options, but the preview was very brief, and the existence of the 3 icons on the left side leads me to believe there are probably separate menus for it that actually involve sliders. It would be a real shame if the 2005 game had these, but the 2023 one didn't. Lastly, if you pay attention on the right side here, these icons indicate that we may be able to save and load character presets. So get ready to hit up that one friend who's really good at making cute characters. Number 4. Content. In this video, we got a very brief preview of a dungeon called Lost Temple. Interestingly, despite beckoning players to experience, quote, team combat, the preview of the dungeon doesn't actually feature any combat footage, and instead shows co-op puzzles. For example, here we see the Mystic Sword passing on a lightning buff to the Galeblade before she carries it over to open a barrier. And here we see all 3 party members dodging rolling stones. The game designer does emphasize the importance of the team's ability to work together, but I would have loved to see an encounter with a boss, or at the very least an indication that there even is one. For the PvP Andies like me out here, good news, this game has arena. And that's just about all the cut and dry info I have. The preview showcases a 1v1 fight in an enclosed Colosseum-like area, which rules out the possibility of this just being a duel. Thus, I assume that at least a 1v1 arena is guaranteed. I would have loved to find out if this arena mode is equalized or gear-based, as that will drastically change my disposition towards it, but as it stands, no info there yet. So, I've rewatched this PvP preview 100 times, trying to juice it for any information I could, and I can tell you a few things. Let me have this nerd moment. You can skip forward if you don't care, I'm sorry. We can see the Galeblade getting juggled by the Mystic Sword here, and she's just taking it until her body touches the ground, at which point she uses what looks like a retaliate or CC break, however you want to call it. So this confirms an existence of a ground CC break, and if you pay attention to her model, you will see it light up white for the duration of the animation. I'm heavily speculating this brief glow is an indicator of immunity to a certain kind of CC, or maybe all CC. Shortly after this interaction, we can see the Mystic Sword use a backflip that gives his body a similar glow, but this time it's orange. I'm a little torn on this part, as this could either be a normal skill that the Mystic Blade has, or this could potentially mean that there is also a CC break for the aerial combos too. But I'm leaning more towards the former, due to the fact that in every other situation the characters are shown being comboed in the air, they are just continuing to take it. This orange glow can also be seen in this part, where the Berserker uses a skill that gives him the same glow to counter Galeblade's initiation. To me, this seems to be a super armor ability. This is an assumption, of course, but basically what I think is that CC breaks give you full immunity indicated by the white glow, and the orange glow during some of the skills we saw probably means stiffness against against knockups only. Moreover, the duration of the white glow in the ground CC break does not persist after the animation, meaning that potentially this game can have perfect tech chases, which is potential for some nice skill expression. The white glow can also be seen during a dash that can be performed on the ground or in midair, meaning you can tank CCs predictably or use the dash as a cheap and risky engage. Okay, I got it out of my system. Let's move on. Zooming all the way out of any kind of combat, there's a cheeky little instance called Mechanopolis. The game designer describes this as a solo activity without combat, focused more on letting you solve puzzles to get loot. Interestingly, in the game designer's own words, this instance involves a lot of, quote, parkour, which I guess sounds really fun. Not much more info to go off of there, but personally I think if this challenge mode is something you can do while leveling as an alternate way to gain XP, that would be pretty cool. And if it's one of the endgame activities, well, at least you get loot. Number 5. World. As one of the dialogue-skipping MMO players, I have frankly no idea what the story in Perfect World was. But for those of you curious about the lore in Perfect New World, here is an official tidbit about the lore. Destruction is inevitable when a civilization reaches its peak. Soul Tamers might be empowered by their emotional spirit energy, but wraiths are born out of their negative emotions when they fail to rein in their power. The sacred city of Skytier comes falling down to Earth with Wraith King springing into existence. 1,000 years after the fall of Skytier, you find yourself in Perfect World as a soul tamer, ready to embark on a journey where you will be fighting wraiths and finding reincarnations of the primes as you stumble across bits and pieces of hints that take you ever closer to discovering the truth of why the sacred city met its bitter end. One of the most unique things I saw in this trailer were the spirit beasts. As you traverse the world, you will encounter these mystical creatures, and upon defeating them, you can gather their essence, which will allow you to summon them to help you in battle. Remember the battle Imagines in Blue Protocol? Well, in this game, you are the Imagine. Instead of summoning them, you briefly transform into them, just for the duration of their attack. To clarify, you don't shapeshift and use your own abilities. That is, each spirit beast possesses their own unique abilities that they will quickly perform once shapeshifted. Judging by this part here, where we can see an animal icon equipped on a separate area of the hotbar, once harvested they are probably permanent, and you can only have one equipped at a time. As you traverse the world, you will come across random world events that you can complete for extra rewards. This was mentioned very briefly, but looks to be a very similar system to Fates in Final Fantasy XIV, requiring you to kill enemies or escort NPCs. Speaking of traversing the world, that can be done on foot, on a ground mount, or through the use of flying mounts that look like wings, which is also one of the major things that stays true to the original game. And here are a couple things I noticed in the trailer that weren't mentioned directly or reviewed at all. Firstly, this flower. And I'm pointing it out because it's very large and has a sparkling glow around it. I am speculating that this means you can gather materials in the open world. The crafting and gathering system was not mentioned in the trailer at all, so we don't know much about it, but this could be a very small indication to its potential existence. This part shows a world boss that will require multiple people to defeat. NPCs you bump into will react to it, you can grapple to reach higher places, and you can emote. Number 6. Pure speculation. In this section, I want to briefly preview some of the races and classes from the original Perfect World, as speculation for what's to come. Since we already know the 3 races that made it into Perfect New World, let's start there. The Mystic Sword, wielding a glaive and being a human, resembles the Blade Master class the most. The other 2 human classes are Wizard, which is a magic-based caster that wields the elements of water, fire, and earth, and uses a Guqin as a weapon. And Technician, ranged heavy artillery gunner class, both of which are female. The Berserker resembles the Barbarian the most, and being of the same race, its female counterpart is named Venomancer, a staff-wielding hybrid between a mage, summoner, and a poison user. Interestingly, the Elven race in the original game doesn't possess a class that resembles a Gale Blade, but the 2 male classes available to the Elven are Edgerunner, a sword and shield melee class, and the Archer in every meaning of the word. The female class for the Elven is Cleric, which is a harp-wielding healer class. The original game also had 3 more races that did not make it into Perfect New World quite yet, which means they may be possible additions in the future. The first being the Tideborn, a race of mermaids that live underwater, but also can have legs if they want. Their playable models are entirely humanoid with fins instead of ears, possessing the ability to fill the Assassin and the Psychic classes. The next race are named Earthguard, as they are not born, but resurrected to protect the realm. They are humanoids that can have both human and elf ears and have a jewel on their forehead, which is said to be their 3rd eye. The 2 Earthguard classes are Mystic and Seeker. Lastly, the Nightshade race. They're basically humans, but edgy. In their lore-appropriate true form, they don large horns on their heads, Wings, and Scaly Tails. The Duskblade and Stormbringer are the classes available to this race. Lastly, number 7. Possible issues. The number one issue that stood out to me like a sore thumb soaked in gasoline and set on fire was the FPS issues in the gameplay trailer. Thankfully, as mentioned previously, this closed beta is aimed at ensuring stability and playability. I've seen a lot of people in the Discord inquire about the reasons behind the system requirements being seemingly outlandishly high for a game like this, and the official answer was this. This test was designed to check and adjust game features and performance, so higher device requirements are asked for to make sure the game runs properly. We will continue to optimize the game performance during and after the test, to ensure that the game can run on a wider range of devices before the official release. So it looks like the developers are specifically looking for people with higher end PCs to test their game in this closed beta for reasons that go right over my technologically illiterate head. But at least it looks like the launch of the game may see a lowered bar of system requirements. Hopefully, they keep their word. Another possible issue, which is more my own, but one that I'm sure many people will share, is the monetization. As this is an Eastern MMORPG, they don't tend to have a very good reputation when it comes to monetization models. When I asked my friend Neo, who was a much more long-term player than myself, what the monetization looked like in Perfect World, he described it to me as a gacha system for cosmetics and some, quote, pay-to-progress items on the shop, but nothing that was required to play the game. However, one thing I know about Neo is that he played the game during its earlier years. Contrasting this comment with this one on my reaction video to the trailer written by Horizon Gaming, who eagerly warns everyone about how terrible the company was, I'm not sure. The silver lining is that Perfect New World is being developed by Ironcore, which is not the same company that was developing and handling the original game. The developers have not commented on the monetization as of yet, but I really do hope this information will be unveiled to us in the near future. Lastly, a possible big issue that doesn't affect me personally, but may be a big turnoff to a lot of potential players, is of course the gender and race locking of classes. Even though I usually don't mind that, I definitely recognize that this is an archaic system that heavily limits player creativity. We will have to see if these speculations are actually true, but if they are, the developers will have to practice what they preach when talking about coming together with players to make a game that everybody can enjoy. And they have to make a choice, whether they want to stay true to the vision of the original game from 2005 or ensure as much player enjoyment as possible. Even though I can appreciate staying true to the source material, in the case where this vision will be seen as a heavy negative by a lot of people, the right choice seems rather obvious. And there you go. Hopefully this video shed some light on a few of the questions that you may have had about this game, or just showed you a brand new game you didn't know existed before this. Admittedly, it's really difficult for me to get excited about new MMOs these days, and if you are an MMORPG enjoyer like myself, you probably know why. Sadly, all of the official information from these official sources is missing two key points that typically determine my level of involvement of any MMORPG, being monetization and game progression / endgame loop. However, whenever that information is revealed to us at a later time, in the future, I will be making a video covering it, so don't forget to subscribe. I am more active on my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/LaufieLOL, where right now I'm streaming Lost Ark while waiting for Blue Protocol, and at a point where I can stream this game without an NDA, I will probably stream this game as well. So if you are an enjoyer of MMOs like me, come say hi, come hang out. We have a pretty friendly community there. I appreciate you watching this video until the very end, and I will see you in the next one.